Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast. There are companies out there quietly making waves in the investment world, and today we're going to take a closer look at one of those companies, Destiny Tech 100 or DXYZ on the New York Stock Exchange. Ever wish you could have gotten in on SpaceX before it went public? Well, DXYZ offers that kind of unique opportunity, owning a piece of some really exciting private tech companies, and that includes SpaceX.
What's really interesting about DXYZ is it's a closed-end fund. Now, that means it has a set number of shares. Unlike a mutual fund, which can constantly issue more, DXYZ aims to invest in 100 high-growth tech companies. They're at 22 right now. But the one that's really grabbing everyone's attention is SpaceX, making up a whopping 36.9% of their entire portfolio.
Well, almost 37%. That's a huge chunk of change riding on just one company. So for someone new to all this, could you break down what that means for everyday investors like you and me?
Yeah, it definitely raises the question of concentration risk. Think of it like this. If SpaceX takes off like a rocket, well then DXYZ could see explosive gains. But on the flip side, if SpaceX hits any turbulence, DXYZ is going to feel it big time. It's really a high-stakes bet on SpaceX's success.
Yeah, and we're talking about serious money here, right? I read somewhere that back in April 2024, SpaceX's value within DXYZ was already $18.4 million, and that represented 34.6% of their holdings at that time.
And you have to consider all the buzz around SpaceX lately, with all the talk of a potential IPO. And their continued dominance in the space tech sector. It's very likely its value has jumped up considerably since April. This could be a major driver for DXYZ's stock price.
That's super exciting, but also a little bit nerve-wracking, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you consider DXYZ's stock price history. I mean, it's currently at $68.99, but its 52-week range has been a wild ride, from a low of $7.75 to a high of $105.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. DXYZ is definitely not for the faint of heart. I mean, that kind of price swing can make your stomach churn. And its beta of 6.24, well, that tells us it's over 6 times more volatile than the overall market. So just to clarify, a beta of 1 means a stock generally moves in line with the market. So a beta of 6.24, DXYZ is going to react dramatically to any market shifts.
So what does all this mean for someone thinking about maybe dipping their toes into DXYZ? What do their recent earnings tell us?
Well, their Q3 2024 earnings showed an increase in net asset value, or NAV per share, which is definitely positive, but their price to earnings ratio, or PE ratio, is a whopping 345.46. Now, for context, a quote-unquote normal PE ratio is much lower.
Okay, so break that down for us. What does a crazy high PE ratio like that actually tell us?
Well, it suggests that investors are banking on huge growth in the future. They're willing to pay a premium for DXYZ because they believe its value is going to skyrocket. The real question is, will it actually live up to the hype?
So is it fair to say that DXYZ is basically a gamble on the future of SpaceX? I mean, they're the dominant player in the space tech sector with their, game-changing innovations like reusable rockets and their Starlink satellite internet.
SpaceX is definitely the cornerstone of DXYZ. And yeah, the space tech sector is experiencing a huge boom, with SpaceX leading the charge. If they can continue on this path of groundbreaking innovation and capture a significant portion of the market, it could very well translate into substantial gains for DXYZ investors. But we shouldn't forget that DXYZ isn't just betting on SpaceX. They do have 21 other companies in their portfolio, some of which are pretty exciting in their own right.
Yeah, true. Besides SpaceX, what else is in DXYZ's portfolio that has you particularly intrigued?
Well, one that stands out to me is Axiom Space. They're developing the first commercial space station, which is a really fascinating concept.
I see how that ties in nicely with the whole space tech theme. It seems like the private sector is really taking the lead these days in space exploration.
Absolutely. And Axiom is positioned to be a major player in this burgeoning market. Their success could significantly contribute to DXYZ's growth.
And then there's OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT and all those other mind-blowing AI tools. It seems like you can't go a day without hearing about AI these days.
OpenAI is undeniably a force to be reckoned with. They're really pushing the boundaries of what's possible with AI, and their technology has the potential to disrupt so many industries. Having them in the portfolio just adds another layer of growth potential to DXYZ.
It is interesting, though, even with these other promising companies, the success of DXYZ still seems very tied to SpaceX.
That's true. And that brings us back to the issue of diversification. While DXYZ is invested in 22 companies, that heavy reliance on SpaceX means their fortunes are still very much intertwined.
So for those of us listening who might be considering
Yeah.
investing in DXYZ, what are some things we should be keeping an eye on in the broader market?
Well, first and foremost, pay attention to the space tech sector as a whole. news and developments related to SpaceX's competitors, government regulations, or advancements in space technology. All of that could have a direct impact on DXYZ.
So even if SpaceX is doing well, if the overall space tech sector takes a hit, DXYZ could still feel the pain.
Exactly. It's also crucial to monitor interest rates and inflation. These broader economic factors can really influence investor sentiment towards growth stocks. And DXYZ, with its high PE ratio, is particularly sensitive to these shifts.
So it sounds like investing in DXYZ is not for the passive investor. You really need to stay informed
Yeah.
and be prepared for a potentially bumpy ride.
Yeah, you could say that. It's certainly not a set it and forget it kind of investment. It requires staying up to date on market trends and being comfortable with a certain level of risk.
Okay, so let's say someone out there has done their research. They've carefully considered the risks, and they're still interested in DXYZ. What advice would you give them?
My advice would be to start small and diversify. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Balance your portfolio with other investments that align with your risk tolerance and your financial goals.
That's wise advice for any investment, really. Now, we've talked a lot about the nuts and bolts of DXYZ. But what about the bigger picture? What are the experts saying about its long-term prospects? Do they believe this fund can really deliver on its promise of high growth?
That's a great question. And the expert opinions are actually quite divided. Some analysts are extremely bullish on DXYZ, viewing it as a potential gold mine for investors. We're looking to get in on the ground floor of the next generation of tech giants.
They're predicting DXYZ could really take off, huh?
Yeah, they really are. They're pointing to a few key factors. First, there's the anticipated growth of SpaceX. They believe SpaceX is on track to become, like a major player in the space economy, potentially even surpassing some of the big established aerospace companies out there. Second, there's the potential for a highly profitable SpaceX IPO, if and when that happens. DXYZ could see a significant windfall. And finally, they're really bullish on the overall growth of the entire space tech sector. They believe this is just the beginning of a multi-decade boom. And DXYZ is perfectly positioned to ride that wave.
Yeah, it's hard not to get caught up in all that excitement. But I imagine not everyone is quite so gung-ho about DXYZ. What are the naysayers saying?
Oh, you're right. There are definitely some analysts who are urging caution. They acknowledge the potential upside. But they also really emphasize the risks that come with DXYZ's concentrated portfolio and its high volatility.
So they're kind of like the voice of reason then, reminding us that investing in DXYZ isn't a guaranteed path to riches?
Exactly. They stress the importance of diversification, thorough research and a long-term investment perspective. They're basically warning against getting swept up in all the hype and making impulsive decisions. They're basically saying, look, DXYZ could be a star, but don't bet the farm on it.
It sounds like a balanced approach is key here. Don't go all in, but don't dismiss the potential either.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's really about carefully weighing the potential rewards against the inherent risks, and then making an informed decision based on your own individual circumstances and your own risk tolerance.
So after taking this in-depth look at DXYZ, what's the main takeaway for our listeners who are now probably wondering whether to jump on the DXYZ train or steer clear?
Well, ultimately, the decision rests with each individual investor. But I think the key message here is this. DXYZ is a high-risk, high-potential opportunity. It offers a unique way to gain exposure to the potentially explosive growth of private tech companies. But it also comes with a significant degree of uncertainty and volatility. It's crucial to do your homework, understand the underlying assets, carefully assess the risks, and make sure it aligns with your overall investment strategy and your financial goals.
So before you invest in DXYZ, or really any fund for that matter, take some time to think about your personal financial goals and your own risk tolerance. Thanks for listening to Investing Talk Podcast. Be sure to subscribe, share this episode with your friends, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, happy investing.